Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Garavani Vicharane Nirvishivya Shunyavadi Paskacha Desatarane Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. This lighting looks really drastic. Just take off the glasses. Well, you were talking about Srila Prabhupada's Murti coming to Columbus, but maybe a little backtrack that Srila Prabhupada in person came to Columbus. It was in 1969 in May. And at that time, there was another building. It wasn't the one that's currently there. He never came to this building. But he did go to OSU, Hitchcock Hall, and it was a fairly dramatic presentation, actually. There was, I mean, I heard there was 2,000 students, but I don't know if Hitchcock Hall can hold 2,000 students. But anyway, it was a packed venue. And Prabhupada is not a swishy-wishy flower petal, flowery talk type of person. He's giving us the absolute truth in plain, understandable language, not trying to diminish that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and letting us understand that means Krishna is a person. Personality means a person, which at the time many of us were not able to understand. We didn't even understand if there was God or not, but to speak that God would be a person. One of the theories, turn off the noise in the back, one of the theories at that time, surprisingly enough, made the Time cover magazine that God is dead. Some of the other theories were, we're all God, People would say, I'm God, you're God. And when people would say to me that I was God, I'm like, oh my God, there's no hope. What hope in the world if I'm supposed to be God? But we didn't even know if there was God. I had a fairly clear idea from a young age due to certain experiences that I knew I wasn't this body. That was really clear to me. But I didn't know what I was, who I was. I had experience that showed me there was something, maybe someone greater than me, greater than all of us. But was that God? I didn't know. I just had a very clear experience. Something was bigger than me out there. And somehow was connected to whatever that was or whoever that was. So for me, there was an interest in finding out who I was, what I was, and with all the confused ideas going out and about, coupled with different ways of trying to crack through the barriers, which inevitably meant using some kind of mind-altering substance so you could maybe see beyond what you thought you were seeing already. So the upshot of that was a very confused generation. And then came Srila Prabhupada. And at one point, as mentioned, he visited OSU. The devotees had arranged for this program. And I'll just give one thing that he said that caused a standing ovation. So he's speaking to these students in a way that they have never heard before, because this topic of transcendence, it's not taught in the college or the university or honestly, I found it wasn't even taught in church. And the idea of finding out who you are, what you are, was definitely not in the agenda. But here was Prabhupada in this college telling us, you're not this body, you're spirit soul. And you have an eternal relationship with the Supreme Spirit, Lord Krishna, God. And in many other instances, when he started talking like that, people were stunned almost into silence because it was just such a novel concept. It was unheard of. And at that time, there was very few books available outside of, I can just name them on like half of one hand. There were editions of Bhagavad Gita, but inevitably they were interpretations. You know, Krishna is the speaker, but they were interpreting what he meant to say, even though Krishna said what he meant to say. Then there was Tibetan Book of the Dead and the I Ching. So mostly people from my era, we would get into the I Ching or the Tibetan Book of the Dead, which really didn't teach you anything in terms of understanding who you are, what you were, what's your mission in life, you know. So Prabhupada, he brought that dimension into countless lives. And some people, they took it so seriously that they actually became his followers. And I was one of those people. In January of 1967, I formally took vows of initiation, and my name became Malati Devi Dasi. So during the discussion in the Hitchcock Hall, I remember Prabhupada listening. No, I wasn't there. I was like in the UK at that point. But Prabhupada was saying, you know, you're praying, the Christians are praying, dear God, please give me my daily bread. And Prabhupada said, this isn't love of God, this is love of bread. And the students just jumped up and they were really enthusiastic. They appreciated his candid reply, his candid observation. So that was done. And then at that time, I think the temple was located in a former fraternity house. Oh, I'm 15th Avenue Street, something like that. It doesn't exist any longer from what I've been told. But eventually, the Krishna House made its way to the present location on West 8th Avenue, right across the street from the university, which afforded us many wonderful opportunities of interaction and festival programs that we could take advantage of that location and attract a broader audience. And the little house was, by the students, they just called us the Krishna House. So the Columbus was the first Krishna House because that's how we were known. And when I came in 1990, I liked that, you know, it's like, yeah, the Krishna House, it sounds like comforting, warm, welcoming, you know, so I kind of stuck with that. And it was basically only ladies. It wasn't planned that I didn't go there thinking, I'm just going to have ladies and that's it. Maybe you can turn off, whoever that is, turn off your audio. So, sorry, but it's like if people don't know they should turn it off, I don't mind mentioning it to them. Yeah, so it wasn't like a plan. How I ended up there was I was visiting in New Vrindavan. I wasn't living there yet. I was coming quite regularly from New York City, where I was living. And at one point, this one lady, she was like, I didn't have a car, and she would actually come and take me from New Vrindavan to, from New York City to West Virginia, and she'd take me back again because I had a job. And then at one point, I just thought, I don't need this job. So I gave notice that I would, be departing, and my employer said, I knew this was going to happen, but she didn't say it in an unkind way. I knew this was going to happen. And I started traveling with this lady. She had a Sankirtan van. And so we were in New Vrindavan at one point, and I heard about this center in Columbus. So we decided, let's go and see what that's about. And it was kind of unkept. I think that would be a polite way of saying it. We parked in the back, and the grass and the weeds were up to my knees. And we walked in, the door was open, so I walked in the side door, and there were, it was really strange. I remember there was where Prabhupada is now, there was a couch, just regular couch. And but I saw the deities, and I was just struck with wonder by these beautiful forms of Krishna and Radharani. And there was also a small murti of Srila Prabhupada. Small meaning one of these ones are about maybe 10, 12 inches. And he was sitting on the corner of the altar. Also, there was a Gornitai there. There was Ram Chandra, Sita. There wasn't Lakshman there, just Sita Ram, and then there was a Hanuman. The deities of the deities of Jagannath, Subhadra, Baladev, they were in absence. They were actually had been in Columbus, but somehow they journeyed up to, at some point before my time, they journeyed up to New York, upstate New York, and in Buffalo. So at this time they weren't there. And then they had come down to New Vrindavan, and I didn't know that they'd ever had anything to do with Columbus. Now on the New Vrindavan altar where Jagannath used to be, now he's not on that altar, he's up in the front of the temple, there were several sets of small Jagannath deities. And nobody had mentioned to me that one of those sets had actually been in Columbus. So I just knew that there was those deities there in New Vrindavan. So I heard in one of my visits, I heard that they were planning to close the Columbus Center. And I was frankly shocked because I knew very well that Srila Prabhupada said, once you open a center, particularly if deities are there, you should not close it. It should never be closed. Maybe you're going to get a bigger building or something, but not to close the center. So I was feeling a little bit like, how can that be? What can that be? And I remembered when I walked up the stairs and I looked into the temple room and saw those beautiful deities of Radha, Vrindavan, Yadubara, I was thinking, maybe I could do something. Maybe I could do something for Prabhupada here. But it wasn't like I'm going to do something. It wasn't, it was just, it came. Maybe I could do something here. So when I heard about they were going to close the temple, I spoke to the person who I heard that from. I said, what's happening? Why are they closing? And if you want, I can help you. I'll be glad to help. And she goes, oh, well, we're just going to have a meeting today with the former head of New Vrindavan. We're going to have a meeting with him, and I'll mention it to him. Okay. So then sometime later in that day, she said, yeah, you can come and help. It wasn't like you'll be the temple president, you'll be running this center. I'm just going to go and help. And that's how I looked at it. But it turned out there was actually nobody else. except me and some really strange people who were living in the building. And they were so strange that I slept out in my van. I had that big dinosaur van at the time. Some of you may remember when I had that, the trans van. So I would sleep out in the van and just go in and use the bathroom. But I just thought, these people, they're not participating in spiritual life. Not only was there a couch, they had a television. And I was thinking, okay, they're going to be looking at some kind of, you know, Krishna conscious, there's Krishna conscious stuff out that goes in when they used to have those big cassettes that went in. So I was thinking that's why the TV was there. But then I found out, no, that's not why the TV was there. These people were like watching TV. So I was thinking how to handle that. And I thought, well, the best thing to do is just clearly institute Prabhupada's program, Mangal Arti, et cetera, And when I did that, these people started drifting away because they weren't there because they were really interested in Krishna consciousness. It was just a crash pad for them. So that was kind of the beginning. And then I was realizing actually I needed somebody else there because I also had to finance. I was getting $50 a month towards the rent from the persons who had been there previously, Gopa and Damodar. But otherwise, I was financing by selling paintings. So I felt like there needs to be somebody else here to give a hand, to help keep the programs going, etc., and also to help with the deities. So the head of New Vrindavan sent over a god sister of mine, Ilavati, who left her body last year in Paris. She was French. So that was kind of the upstart. The two of us were there. Whoever came, we were, greeting them, meeting them. And then things happened. One was I heard all this talk about the rainbow, but I didn't know what it was. Like I was in Vrindavan and people were talking about the rainbows. So I was looking around, but I didn't see any rainbows. And then they started talking to the rainbow. So everything in Vrindavan was really strange for me in the beginning. So, okay, talking rainbows, okay. And then I heard the rainbows were coming and they were going to be meeting with the head of the community. So I thought, well, I definitely want to be there for that. I want to see what are these talking rainbows. And that's when I found out about the Rainbow Gathering. And I went for my first one, so it was in 1990, 90, could have been 91, yeah. So I went up there, I was in Vermont, and it was a little shocking for me at first because the way it was set up to get into the main situation, you had to go through what was known as A camp. And I was told you have to go through A camp, but nobody explained to me what that A camp meant. And if you don't know, it meant alcoholics. So I go there and you're, walking in and suddenly there's this totally insane amount of people just like whacked out. And I was like, what is this? Why is this? And some other people, I guess they noticed my bewilderment and they go, just keep walking, which I did. And then I eventually came up, met the devotees. And from that gathering, there was a few number of people who came back who landed in New Vrindavan. And there was some, our first Bhaktin who came back and landed in Columbus. So that was also interesting because probably you all know that Radhanath Swami was quite, they called him, the Rainbow Swami. So at this particular situation, to get into the camp was quite difficult. And apparently that's quite normal. And we all had teepees. We had a great big teepee, like the 34-foot teepee that we'd all come into in the evening and chant. And some of us, including myself, had our own teepees, just like smaller teepees. So somebody came to me and said, there's this girl and she's lost everything she has. She doesn't have anything. Can she stay in your teepee? And my less than gracious response was, well, did she have lice? And she said, no, she doesn't. I said, okay, she can come. And so the next, she was there for the night. She came to the morning program. And the next day, we're walking up the trail, and Radhanath Swami came walking down the trail. So she'd seen him that evening chanting. And suddenly she runs up to him and she grabs him like, Swami, you look like you need a hug. And she wasn't fat. She was just a big, strong girl. And he's looking over her shoulder at me like, do something. And I didn't quite exactly know what to do. But once she let go and, we moved along, I said, um, we have a different way of embracing people. Would you like to learn that? So we got back to the teepee and I taught her about making obeisances. I taught her Vanchakalpa Tarubis Cha. She practiced it all day. And then that night when we were in the teepee, she goes up to Maharaj and I'm not sure what she's going to do, but the teepee's quite crowded. And she bowed down and she repeated the prayer. And so I was relieved, and I think he was too. And she was our first Bhaktin, Violet. And then others came from that rainbow. They drifted in. Others came from other rainbows, different rainbows, the smaller gatherings, bigger gatherings. And just inevitably, the girls would drop off and stay in Columbus, and the men would shuffle over to New Vrindavan. So actually, the Columbus temple was quite energetic in terms of preaching. We revived a little center down in Athens. There had been one, but then it had closed up. So that was revived. We're doing a regular program in Kent State. If anybody remembers, Kent State was quite notorious because Kent State was where 4 college students were shot and killed on the campus just walking with their books because it was during the protest against the Vietnam War, and they declared a state of emergency on campus because so many students were against this war. And I think the people it wasn't like they picked out these people, they were just shooting, and 4 of them innocently died. So it was quite a very intense situation. And somehow or other, we were very well received up there. So we were preaching, we didn't have a permanent address. We were preaching out of on one evening a week from a Unitarian Universalist church. So one evening, we're up there at that church. So it's like about a couple hours of a drive. And we'd drive up, we would bring prasadam. And, the girls, all of them were very proficient with mridangas or kartals and chanting, so everybody was very enthusiastic to take part in our preaching programs. And this wasn't the only one. Through the week, there was different ones, the one down in Athens, the one in Kent. Then we got the place in Louisville. So there was just a lot of activity coming out of that little Krishna house there. And one evening, we were particularly excited to be going to Kent State because that evening a crew from New Vrindavan was coming over, and which always kicked up the level of the Kirtan. But in addition, this crew was bringing us our first Sankirtan van. And in those days, the vans were inevitably Ford Econolines. It was like the van of choice in those days. I don't even know if they make them anymore. So we were going to get that van, and there's a really, enthusiastic, exuberant kirtan going on. And I happened to look out the window, and I saw somebody getting out of their car. I think this night we were actually in a building in the campus. At any rate, I looked out the window. I see a car pull up that I didn't recognize because by now I kind of knew the regulars, and a tall, black-bodied devotee steps out. So I had heard about Yadavacharya, but I had never met him. But I knew instantly, oh, here is Yadavacharya. I'm going to meet him. And then he walks around to the other side of the car and opens the door, and he has a cardboard box in his hand. But out of the top of the box, I see a head of Srila Prabhupada. So I suddenly think, oh my God, he's coming in here with Prabhupada. We have to have a place for him. But the Kirtan was just like, one of those up, down, back, forth, loud. And I go to Jamuna, who was my right-hand arm there, and I said, Prabhupada's coming. That's all I had to say. She just made some space, and just then Prabhupada entered. So after the program, I went up to Yadavacharya, introduced myself, and I said, you're welcome to come and visit Columbus anytime. Please come. And he's welcome to come and stay permanently. And Yadavacharya said, he's yours. So that was quite stunning. We got our new van and we got Prabhupada. It was like kind of a very, that was unexpected, but also quite fitting. And usually on the way home, we would pull into the first rest area and take a little rest because, we'd been going all day and the drive up, and so we'd take a little break just so the driver wouldn't fall asleep at the wheel. But on that particular occasion, Prabhupada was strapped into the passenger seat. I was behind the wheel, and there was no question of falling asleep, Just kept looking at Prabhupada, and you're not going to fall asleep. But when we got him into the house, I had a closer inspection, and I saw that there was some pieces that he wasn't all in one piece, and his feet weren't attached, and I wasn't sure what to do or what to think, so I brought him upstairs into what we at that time called the Pujari room. It was actually where the library room is now. So I had him there, and then Radhanath Maharaj came, it was a day or two later, and I said, please come upstairs. And I showed him, I said, so, what to do, because I knew as is we couldn't, initiate worship. And Maharaj says, well, the only person I know who could maybe do something would be Kumar. Kumar was the person in New Vrindavan who helped with all the moldings. They used to have a mold shop there, and they made deities, they made all the parts to the temple, the pillars, and many different things. And of course, the palace, many of the fixtures in the palace came out of that mold shop. So I was thinking, my God, he never comes to Columbus. So I'm thinking, well, I'll have to arrange to go over there. But the next day, somebody walked in the side door, and I looked, and it was Kumar, of all people. I said, I didn't even wait for him to go in the temple. I said, please come upstairs. I have to show you something. And I said, can you do something? And he said, well, it was very casual. Well, I can try. So he took Srila Prabhupada over the form, and it was on the what do you call it? The first week, Labor Day weekend. That's the first one in like September, I think. I think that was the time when he came back. So Radhanath Maharaj and Jayadvaita Maharaj came to Columbus that day with Srila Prabhupada. And we were having a big, welcome back festival. And it wasn't like a fully resurrected form. I think many of you know that. And we say we worship the lotus feet of the spiritual master. And the thing was, his feet weren't there, but there was one foot, but it was dislocated. And I said, we have to have his foot. So we just put that foot there, honored that lotus foot, and started worshiping him. And I don't even remember the date. I have such a poor memory when it comes to dates, so that would maybe be something that Yadavacharya can pick up and contribute and add his parts, because of course it wasn't like he started out in Columbus. He started out in California, and that's where, Yadavacharya had brought him from California, from the fate. There was a group that worked on making different forms of Prabhupada and probably other things at that time. And the head of that was Lochan Das, who is world renowned for his incredible murtis. He has made the new murti for the Temple of the Planet, new temple of the Vedic Planetarium. And he's now 83 years old, and he's still serving Prabhupada by making his beautiful forms. So, does Yadavacharya want to say something now? I see he's here, and he has some parts he might want to throw in. I actually wanted to talk to you the other day during Gaur Purnim, but then you disappeared. There was so many people, I couldn't cross over to where you were sitting.
No. Anyway, thank you so much, Malati. I love you. You're a wonderful inspiration to all the devotees. And after what you've said, I realized this was all, and I said this in the video that I made, this was all Prabhupada's mercy. This was all, however, it was put together because as time goes on, we've always seen magic. We've seen Krishna doing things that, just like Kumar showing up. This is like nobody just shows up. Krishna has already planned all of this before we even got to that point. And just like when I was bringing him to you at Kent State, um, it was so much that I knew that deep down inside, I kept hearing him telling me, take me to Malati. Now, I didn't understand all of the details, but I knew by Krishna's mercy, it was time for him to be properly tended to. And I couldn't imagine anyone so dear to him, so dear to Prabhupada as you, that would have been able to put all of these pieces together because it was putting together. And again, in the video that I made telling people how I didn't understand all the details. I didn't know what I was supposed to do. I just knew that it was time for him to be properly uh, worshipped as he should have been. And he was, and he is. He's still, even still to this day. So I don't know how else to explain it, but I can see Krishna having been involved all this time and how Prabhupada, by his will, wound up being where he is now. What happens from here, that's a whole different story. I don't even want to try to understand that part because I realize that I don't have future vision, but I do have what I saw the devotees, particularly putting him back into a semblance of nice presentation. And for those who come to see Prabhupada, when they uh, look at him, they will be inspired. And that was always, I remember one devotee who, what was it, Krishna Nandini, she said that when she and her mother, Bhumata, were going to, I believe it was in Dallas, and the one thing that they recognize is that Prabhupada will always fan the flame.
Yeah.
If there was a little bit of Krishna consciousness, he would always fan the flame.
And by the way, they were not seeing a deity of Prabhupada. They were with Prabhupada in person.
Yes, right. Yes. That was so wonderful. That was just one of those, again, the whole story of having heard it from Krishna Nandini, how that actually happened. And at the same time, I realized I was also at the Kent State University just before those four students were killed. I remember we had just been finished doing Sankirtan there, and
On the
it
same
was
day,
amazing.
on the same day you were there?
No, no, not on the same day. Just before, a few weeks, maybe a week before all of that happened, we were there. Sri Govinda, um, Lakshmi Narayan, who was it? Also, Kalia Krishna, and others that we were doing, traveling Sankirtan at that
That
time.
was such a shocking event that I was in the UK and
Mhm.
was on headlines even in the United Kingdom. That's how
Mhm.
I found out.
Oh, yeah, it was amazing. Those were amazing times. Um, if I tell people if you had to have been there to appreciate everything. I was actually a young airman at in the Air Force, and I think it was 1966, 1967. I was in San Francisco, and I can't remember, but it seems like I may have even thought that there was something going on there. I just didn't understand what it was, but that was the presence of Srila Prabhupada beginning to change for the consciousness of everyone.
So thank you, Yadavacharya,
You're welcome.
for listening to Super Soul in Your Heart, which was
Mm,
representing Srila Prabhupada.
hmm
Um, Harinamananda,
Oh,
what else should be mentioned?
Okay, thank you so much. Um, yes, I'm not sure what your time is like. This has been 45 minutes now. If you want to continue, I believe I remember you telling a past time about traveling with a different Morty Srila Prabhupada and getting stopped by the police or the border, and they kept asking Prabhupada for his ID, something.
Yeah. There, I actually have a picture of that. That Murti isn't really a Murti. It was an animated form of Prabhupada that was in the Fate Museum. Um, Yadavacharya, what is the meaning of FATE? I can't remember. For the fate. What is that meaning?
fir- First uh, transcendental exhibition.
Okay. So there
First
was,
American transcendental exhibition.
so in LA, there was a fate museum and one in Detroit. And in the one in Detroit, there was this animated Prabhupada that was sitting right at the entrance to the museum. So in Detroit, it was like uh, a very famous building that had belonged to some very famous people before the most famous person, Srila Prabhupada, accepted it as one of his temples. So he was in the entryway to the where the museum part would be. The other part and other entry was like the temple. And he would lean forward and his arm would move like he was writing. There was a pen in his hand. People would come up and hand him pieces of paper to sign. So at one point before I was involved in Detroit on the level that I was as GBC, this wasn't even there when I came in 1990. So what had happened, I guess it stopped working. They couldn't get it to work, and they put it in this closet that was right by when you would come in, was just right there on the door to the left in front of the desk, the greeting desk. And as is wont, people just started putting other things. It was a long closet, and he was the first occupant of the closet, and then other people started putting more things in, more things in, more things in. So by the time I got there, when I opened the door, it's like, what is all this? This is really inauspicious. I'm right by the entry of, of the museum, of the temple. There's just all this trash in a closet. It really bothered me, if you want to say it was bad vastu. So finally, one day, they cleaned it out. They took it to heart and they cleaned it out. And they found that was a misdial from my phone. They found him at the end of the closet, but they didn't tell me about that, right? They were just telling me how they had cleaned out the closet, and I thought, oh, this is wonderful. I would definitely, my next visit up to Michigan, I'm going to take darshan of the clean closet. But I went first to Farmington Hills Temple, and I went into the office there, which isn't a very large, because the temple is only like 11,000 square feet, which sounds like a lot, but just the way it's played out, there's not, there's space, but not a lot of space for things like extra stuff that you don't have a use for or aren't going to use, whatever. So I walked in and to the office, and I see Prabhupada sitting there on the chair. And I turned to Yugal Kishore, what is this? Where did he come from? And he says, well, Jagat Guru dropped him off. And he goes, we don't know what to do with him. And I said, well, I do. Put him in my car. So he's in my car, in the front seat belt on. And I was driving down to a federal penitentiary, a very high level, like, tight penitentiary. And I visited there before, so I knew the thing. You go in and they stop you and you show your ID and your car's ID and all blah, blah, blah. And so then I showed everything, and I'm expecting the normal wave, but he's still standing there. And I'm like, and he goes, and the gentleman next to you, his ID. So I looked at him and I say, what? You're asking for his ID? He goes, all over the world, no one ever asks for his ID. And the guy kind of like, what? And then I didn't want him to it's a mannequin. And then he says to me something that I had been thinking on the drive down. You have to drive down 77th House, right? So I had been thinking, I could probably go in the Huff lane. But I didn't do it because I didn't want to risk any misadventure. So this guy says to me after I said that, he goes, oh, you could go in the Huff lane. I said, I can't believe you. You're an officer of the law. You're packing a pistol, and you're telling me I could break the law. It doesn't make sense. But I was laughing, and he waved me in. So that was that little story. With Prabhupada, there's always little stories,
Actually, we excuse me, I'm sorry. I took Prabhupada and the dioramas that were there in Detroit from Los Angeles. That was one of the last activities that I performed with Fate
Oh,
before I went back to Los Angeles. So I remember we had a very it was really strange to bind the storage area that we had, the building that was on the main street about a half a mile away, that we put all the forms of the deities, or the dioramas, excuse me. And I remember having to put those together just so that they could be put into the dioramas, which I don't know if it's still there. I'm probably going to have to go visit. That they are in the where they used to have the boats, the wells at the bottom. That's actually where they started coming in at, and it was very interesting to put all of that together. So all Krishna's mercy.
I was looking, I had a picture, but I don't know how I could show the picture. Let me see here. Anyway, I brought him to New Vrindavan, and anybody who's been here and come into my office, they'll remember my whole office is basically Prabhupada Darshan. They call it Prabhupada Darshan because there's paintings and drawings of Prabhupada on the walls. Even some, like by some well-known artists, actually, even. And he's sitting there. But right now, he's not sitting there. He's on the third floor, and he's being rehabilitated. There was a person in New Vrindavan who is considered to be a mechanical engineering genius. So I was thinking, well, he would be able to like deal with the, you know, the portion that is causes it to work, you know. And I asked him, and I said, I'll pay you. I wasn't asking for a free, but he just like, and I guess he just wasn't interested. So it's been years, you know, and I'm waiting, and then all of a sudden, there's interesting family showed up in New Vrindavan. Uh, a married couple. They have two daughters, and then there's a stepson for the father. There was the mother's son from another, I guess, marriage. And they just stick together. And the kids are all adults. The girls are 30, 33, and I think John, the son, must be like 39 or 40. But they're very interesting people. I don't know how to explain. They are completely into doing service. They're not paycheck people at all. They have some building that was given to them in Montgomery, West Virginia, and there's waiting for some. I mean, I've seen pictures of it. I haven't been down there to look, but they have a plan for this building, and I was thinking some little thing, but it's actually not so little. It was formerly part of some school. So they have this plan there. But there was time. There was like the space of time before they could actually take possession of the building, and they didn't want to go back. They were from South Dakota. That's where they had last lived. Although actually the father had grown up in Michigan. Anyways, they were looking for a place they could stay so they could stay together because they just do everything together as a unit. And they came up from New Vrindavan. So John, that's the father, told me that today because I wanted to make an appointment to go up and have a look at Prabhupada on Saturday. And he told me when they first arrived, he walked in the temple, so it was, you know, after hours. And Prabhupada's, you know, on the Vyasa sign, there's just like a little tiny light. And he sat, you know, sitting, and they do meditation. I'm not exactly sure what type per se. I mean, because they know a lot. They've studied a lot about Vedas. They know a lot, but not in terms of having ever been guided towards bhakti. But they're not adverse, and they're very respectful, and they're doing a lot of service. So he said it was sitting there in the temple, and he was doing his meditation, and then he opened his eyes, and he just said Prabhupada was glowing. And I've had people, it's not something that I'm not familiar with, that people have had these, you know, mystical experiences with Srila Prabhupada. And so he felt really connected immediately to New Vrindavan. And then when he found out that, you know, he'd seen the form in my office, but he had no idea, there's no way of knowing unless you know that this is a mechanical form, an animated. He found out about it, and he found out that it wasn't working. And it turns out he has a history of working with animated forms. So obviously that was just like the answer to my silent prayers. And so he's working on him now, and rehabilitating, you know, there's some of them just he had to like redo some of the parts of the arm and different things. But what's really interesting is on the face and the upper torso and the arms, it's not like this hard form that we're used to in the Murtis. It's like skin. You can hold his hand, and whatever they used, it's like touching skin. You know, if I touch your hand, it's like touching. So it's just kind of an amazing thing. And they have little hairs in his eyebrow, and his sika is like little hairs. You know, it's a very kind of an amazing form of Prabhupada. And I was told, like when he was in the entrance, he'd go forward, he'd do the writing. People come up and hand him pieces of paper for his autograph, you know. So we'll see. We'll see how this works out.
I need to make an appointment to come see him.
Yeah. Well, I asked them today, like they're waiting because they had like this was way back, like way back how many years, decades. So the inner mechanics are definitely outdated, but I found out that Lochan was the one who had done this, and somebody had donated them a truckload of broken computers and this and that. So he was just himself cobbling things together to make this into an animated form, and he even made the computer, ran off of the computer, so he even made the computer that made it work. So it was nothing that you could go and like, it wasn't a store-bought situation. It was like, the palace. Devotees did it from ground up. So this was like totally Lojong from the ground up. So John is really good, really respectful. And at first we weren't too sure if the arms would be, get them to go, but he fell in love with the services, so he's going to get the arms to go, because we got just get it if he leans forward and it moves a little bit. And I gave him Lochan's number so he could speak to him about some of the mechanical stuff, but he's basically replacing he understands the concept, what needs to happen, and he's replacing and remaking all the mechanical parts. And also he's worked on the parts that, after all that time being knocked around in a closet, and also everything is being really nicely taken care of, much more than I could have even hoped for. Yeah.
Right. Thank you so much.
It's going to be like that whole room is being rehabilitated. They're also making bookshelves now. Because we used to have a library in New Vrindavan. Now we have a marble bathroom. Ugh. We don't have a library, but we have a marble bathroom. As you can tell, that didn't really go over too well with me. So that room will also be like a de facto library, a reading room. Prabhupada said we should have a reading room, so that will be the reading room. And I'm going to put cameras in because it's not for taking the books out. You can go in and read, but not take them out. And I think it's already appreciated. People come there and chant all the time because they just feel, here's a place, here's Prabhupada. Except maybe during japa, otherwise the temples is buzz, buzz, buzz. It's not always the most optimum place to sit and chant. So people come in there, they like to go in there, and people go in there just to, feel Prabhupada. So I have a lot of nice books that'll be going down there. And there'll be nice, the nice shelves, and the desk that was with the big monitors out of there, but the monitor is going to be on the wall and it'll come out. So if we want to see Prabhupada videos or different Krishna conscious, videos, we will be able to do that. I have to get a computer probably, or some type of a machine, but anyway, I hoping to have all this done. I can't give a date yet because I'm depending on the mercy of strangers, as they say, the kindness of strangers. But I plan to have a grand opening. So I'll let you all know, and you're all invited. And the prasadam will be not pasta or pizza, it'll be Prabhupada, Prabhupada style, like maybe kachoris or samosas or, ISKCON bullets. Of course, nowadays you say ISKCON bullets and somebody's going to flinch, but I think you all know I'm talking about gulab jamuns.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
I believe this is Mother Parvati.
Hare Krishna.
Haribo Parvati. Hare Krishna. I missed
Krishna.
you last time I saw you, but anyway, yeah.
The last time I was in New Vrindavan, and I went into this room that you were speaking about, and it blew my mind. I mean, I've seen Srila Prabhupada all over the world, but that Prabhupada there, oh my God, I couldn't believe how real. I mean, it was amazing. I mean, I actually went and I kept saying, I know that can't be real, but he just looked so real. Wow.
Haribo.
Hare Krishna.
I had to fight for this room. Honestly, they wanted to, just like they took the library away for a toilet, they wanted to turn it's not my office, it's Prabhupada's darshan, and they wanted to turn it into another office, all glories. And I was like, anyway, somehow Prabhupada spoke up into the heart of the temple president and he relented. I mean, people started hearing I was getting kicked out of my office. And it was like, what? Wait, So we'll have a nice grand opening, and I hope those of you who can come will come, particularly Mr. Mark Bradley, Yadavacharya.
Actually, I will definitely come, but just remembered I several years ago they had all of the devotees who had been in New Vrindavan,
Oh yeah.
and they asked me to come, and I was thinking, why would they want me to come? I don't think I've ever done anything in New Vrindavan, and I realized that actually I helped to make the Prabhupada Murti that's in the temple,
Oh,
and also the one that is in the palace, and also the writing Prabhupada. I didn't realize the mercy that I was being given. So every time, as a matter of fact, I believe the Prabhupada in the temple is actually the most beautiful out of all the ones that were ever put together. He is, I think, the most beautiful.
yeah. He is very beautiful, but I'm going to have to say the Murti he made for the Temple of Vedic Planetarium is mind-blowing. Um, when you don't think it could get any better.
I know.
Cotton is a transcendental Prabhupada magician. That's all I can say.
Well, that's what is always fresh and always new.
Yeah.
So it's unlimitedly getting
But with
better all the time.
Prabhupada in New Vrindavan, there has one day I came in and it's, normal looking guy, and he's just looking at him. Does he ever speak? And I said, he speaks a lot, actually. You see all those books? And I said, how did you learn about this place? And he told me, well, I'm a pilot, a private pilot. I get hired to take, So he was hired to, I don't know where they had him, but he comes over a ridge and he looks down, and it happened to be a big festival day, and it happened to be when we still had Malini the elephant. So he sees all the people. He sees an elephant. And he was like, and he sees the palace, and he goes, where am I? This can't be West Virginia. It was like, he felt like he fell through a hole in the atmosphere. And he says, I've got to come, so he noted the coordinates, and he says, I have to come back here someday. And there he was. And then I've had other people, I've even had this happen, like he was just looking, people looking and just like, I've never seen anyone like this. I'm a Christian, and I feel more the presence of Christ here in this temple than I do in my own church. And he's just looking at Prabhupada, and I said, well, Srila Prabhupada was also a lover of Christ. He said at one point, I want all my devotees to be Christ-like. To be servants of God.
Very nice. That's wonderful.
Okay, so thank you so much for coming on. We'd love to have you come back many, many times. Yeah. So I guess if anyone has any question or comment, otherwise we can wrap it up because it's getting late. But yes.
I thought it was wonderful hearing the history of the Columbus Krishna House. I always wondered kind of how things got going with the girls and everything. So it was wonderful to hear about all of that. So thank you.
So please accept my respectfully offered obeisances. And we have a busload of students from Chicago here. and I'm giving class for them tomorrow. In fact, they came up to my place today. Let me turn this around because you can see my deity. I think you can. Can you see can you see Prabhupada?
Yes.
So this is my personal deity of Prabhupada, and then there's more. I seem to have an affinity for my teacher, Srila Prabhupada. So maybe some of you have heard the Russian devotees made these little tiny deities of Prabhupada, and they're getting them out to all the Prabhupada disciples as a thank you for having, served Prabhupada in his mission. So I have one of those, and then there was some big event, and they gave everybody Murtis of Prabhupada. So then I have that one. And this Murti of Srila Prabhupada, the bigger one that I have, if you have been in Cleveland, you remember there was a larger Murti of Prabhupada there that was part of the Cleveland Yatra for some time. And then he went over to the Harmony Collective in Ypsilanti. But this is the same size, except that he's got gold features. He was covered in gold.
Tapasini wanted to say Haribol to you.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Oh.
Haribol. So nice to hear you speak. It was really nice to hear the whole history and remember some of the earlier days.
I wouldn't say that was a whole history, but there was something there.
Yeah, but
Papasini was one of the Columbus girls.
Yeah, so we were actually hoping to have a small mini reunion that I had reached out to several of the girls who lived in the ashram, and they were gonna come, but unfortunately people didn't show up, so maybe next time.
I see Sati's here, so please, Haribol, and her husband is going through some intense, as we like to say, purification. He's going through chemo. And so please throw your prayers for him at this time, because it's not easy. It's a pretty tough situation. Okay,
Okay, thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Haribol. Thank you.
Someone Vijay Krishna Das has a hand raised.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes,
Yeah, Prabhu, go ahead.
Malati Mataji, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Why can't we see you?
I'm not presentable. I'm in my pajamas right now. Mother Malati, just a very quick question, if I may. When you arrived in London for the first time to fulfill the mission of your Guru Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada, did you have the impression that it would work out? It would happen?
Before we left, we had a darshan with Srila Prabhupada in Montreal the day we were leaving, which was the day after his appearance day. Or was the day of his appearance day. We celebrated Janmashtami and then his appearance day, so that is over noon. So we were leaving to fly to New York, where we would eventually fly out. We had his darshan and some few last instructions. And I had asked his assistant, it was a husband and wife, Team Govinda Dasi and Gorsundar, to ask Prabhupada if we could touch his lotus feet, because I knew that he didn't really like that, and I didn't totally understand the reason why at that point. But I also had heard if you touch the lotus feet of a pure devotee, you can 10,000 lifetimes of whatever get eradicated. And I was thinking, we need all the help we can get. We're landing in that country. We're not going to have any money. We have no introductory. And we had a dream. We had a plan. We had a strategic plan. Meet the Beatles, get them to chant Hare Krishna. But was that going to happen? How? We had no idea. And just like nowadays, you don't even know if you're going to be able to get into America when you come to the border. It's getting so weird. So we also didn't know if we were even going to get allowed in. But there we were in. But we asked Prabhupada, can we touch your lotus feet? And he consented. So right before we departed, you know, he was sitting at his low desk and he extended his feet out to the side. So one by one, we were putting our head down, touching his feet, and he took his hand and he rubbed right there, all of us, me, Jamuna, Janaki, Mukunda, Shamsundar Guru Das. Jamuna took it a step farther. She kissed his feet. She was brought up a Catholic, so if you have a Catholic background, you're going to understand that one. So she kissed his lotus feet. And my daughter, she was like, you know, at that point, like barely, she wasn't even 6 weeks old, barely. He said, hand me the child. So I handed him, and he held her like facing out. So he's holding her, and he flips his garland over both of them. And he smiles, this kind of cheeky smile. And he goes, now they'll say, what kind of sannyas is he? So, okay, Haribol. But yeah, to answer your question, when when he when he blessed us by just rubbing us, and there was like just like this kind of electrical surcharge. So I knew, I think we all knew instinctively. We didn't know how it would happen, but we knew somehow our mission would be successful.
Like an intuition?
Like what?
Like an intuition,
No, it was a confirmation.
a confirmation, yes. So you left the United States of America confident that it would work out, it would happen.
Yeah, sooner or later, somehow or other.
Yes, of
It
course.
was the desire of the pure devotee, and he had
Yes.
That,
blessed us.
that was the key. That was the key. We always had Prabhupada knew exactly what to do. He told us what to do. We followed the instructions and we knew that it would work because we had faith that he knew what he was talking about.
Thank you very much, Malati Mataji. Hare Krishna, my humble obeisance.
Hare Krishna.